Well, hello there, everybody. I'm getting started with AI in project management. Hello, my name is Ashley Hunt. It's good to see everybody. So we're going to talk about core AI technologies. We're also going to go into just some simplified ways or what certain things can do. Where are you at with that? Because like I said, today's going to be pretty much of an overview because we only have an hour of a webinar, but I am going to give you some documents. We're going to download some things into the chat so that you can download, or we're going to upload so you can download some things like prompts, some prompting ways that you can use AI in project management, and also like a 30-day plan week by week for implementation. You're not using it at all? It helps me be nicer in my email. Look, if you're feeling salty, and you're like, my tone is off, then definitively it helps you be nicer in emails. And, other things like templated documentation, if you're head of a PMO or something like that, or you're just trying to template out or automate, that's where we're headed as far as today is concerned. And, there's a lot of jargon out there. There's a lot of things that people are throwing out, and this does this, and this is natural language processing, or this is machine learning. And like I said, there are quite a few as far as jargon is concerned. Do we really need to know the jargon? No. So I'm going to kind of speed through this. But if you've never used AI, you're not using it at all, and ultimately are like, well, what is all this lingo out there? That's kind of what we're going to talk about. Some of these things like ChatGPT can do a lot of these things. Now, we now have add-ons for things like Microsoft Project and so on and so forth. But when we look at project management, there's a lot of repetition in emails and things like that that really are just a time suck, to be honest. When we're supposed to be working on other things, we're now transcribing emails and sending out different emails and so on. So it can be highly helpful. There are others that can, scan or create visuals like photography, like Midjourney and so on. But that's not necessarily something that's fun, but it's not necessarily something that we're going to be utilizing on a regular basis. It's really when we get into like predictive analytics that can be truly helpful. We still need a human being to review and make sure that everything is there, because predictive analytics is not necessarily just predictive project management, but it made me think of it. And then generative AI to create content. And I'm on both sides. I'm on predictive and I'm more agile now. So on the agile side, having the ability to say, hey, can you look at this? Or can you assess risks coming from this particular scope of work and that kind of thing. Robotic process automation. Automation is a good thing, right? Because if we set it up correctly, it can automate tasks for us, thereby leaving us able to work on projects, right? Computer vision analyzes images. That can be helpful in construction, blueprints, that kind of thing. Ultimately. Now, like I said, not every single AI is going to do all of these things. And that's why I think there's so many out there that do different things. Recommendation systems, chatbots, and virtual assistants. How many of you have used a chatbot recently? Anytime you go out to a website, there's a chatbot, right? Well, those things are now being integrated organizationally so that they are protected sandboxes, right? They're organizational sandboxes that give people the ability to get questions answered really quickly. Cloud migration, moving from on-prem to cloud platform. I got you. And that's a, implementation project. There's a lot going on there. Chatbot chatty, it's there everywhere. And it's good if you need it, but you can ignore it if you don't, right? And a lot of times organizations are implementing those things in order to help, right? Chatbots and virtual assistants. So that's not going to change. It's going to get more and more involved, but at the same time, having a safe sandbox is going to be important as well. Speech to text. Those are going to be things that are super helpful. We used to, way back, we used to use one of those little recorders, not like digital recorders, and then have the meeting so that somebody could go back, usually me, go back and transcribe the actual meeting so I could send out meeting notes that were comprehensive. This is a huge time saver. The only sort of rules to that is letting people know, obviously, that you're recording. Data visualization, dynamic dashboards. And I would argue that a lot of our project management software right now can do a really good job with this, but at the same time, it just depends on what kind of dashboards you are creating. What softwares are you using to manage your projects? Are you using Microsoft Project? Are you using Smartsheet? Are you using Planner? Are you using Teams? I know we're all using email, but what kind of software programs are you currently using to manage your current projects? Because now with, cloud-based 365, if you're using Microsoft, 365 has new integration functions, Copilot and that kind of thing. But yeah, Planner, once you can implement it, much easier to use. Monday.com started out as a task board type of program, and they started to recognize that, hey, not everybody uses task boards. Perhaps we should add Gantt charts. So they did. And so you do have the ability to flip back and forth now, which I feel like is a really good thing in this day and age, because a lot of projects are more hybrid based. And it just depends. It depends on what the stakeholders want to see and so on. The good news is that we don't need to know how to code anymore in order to utilize AI or artificial intelligence to automate systems and so on. And so I just wanted to start with simple, actionable ways to integrate AI into your workflow. No coding required. A lot of this, if you're already using it, might be like, well, duh. That's what we use it for. But there might be some things that you've never even thought about. Some of you are not using it at all. So maybe it'll spark something that's like, and here's the deal. Prompting used to be, it's important, but the prompts used to be way more important. But good data in, good data out, prompts are still important. And in fact, I have a download for you that has prompts for project management. If that's something that you've never done before, or you're not getting the kind of data back that you want or are expecting, but I hesitate to say the smarter, the more it learns, the better it gets with some basic types of prompts. So using AI to summarize meetings automatically. This is a huge deal. And I know that there are certain things, even Zoom, can be recorded and create the transcript and so on. ChatGPT 5 on Mac only right now can do that, but I do believe that a Windows version will be out soon. I would imagine many of you are using Windows. So actionable steps, set up an auto record and then have it transcribe the meeting. Notion AI or ChatGPT to prioritize task lists. This is, and I actually, when I kind of use ChatGPT in some ways for demos and classes and things like that, that's the one thing that somewhat blows people's minds, because they're essentially saying, all right, here's the data dump, here's the project goal, what are going to be some things that we can use in order to break it into actionable steps. And as mentioned, it's all about good data in, good data out, and what is realistic or able to even be put into it. But you can use it in a more generic fashion and say, hey, I'm working on, a migration project to cloud-based, et cetera. And it can give you somewhat of a list, bullets, clearly, bulleted list, to be able to say, here are some of the things to consider, or here are some of the risks to consider. And that could be an inherent time saver for sure. Use ChatGPT. Now, this is how I use ChatGPT more than anything else. And that's templates. Love a good template, right? Do you have in your organization like a project management office or pretty set, what I would consider to be organizational process that says you have to use XYZ templates? Or are you creating your own? Or is there not a lot of documentation? Like, talk to me about your templates. Do you use a project charter? And that then would be, and that's good if you're starting your PMO. And we talk about this in classes also, is implementation. And in fact, we're going to talk about PMO implementation or team implementation for utilizing AI, but having those templates can go a very long way. And ChatGPT can literally create all the templates you need based on prompts And then you can ask it to change it up or tweak it, that kind of thing, to make sure that whatever's ending up in your templates is what you want to be in there. If you create your own and you only have to do it once, right? And then everybody is utilizing those templates, then that's a great thing. But standardizing documentation and making sure that we have those documents in place is going to be an important aspect, especially if you're setting up a PMO. And so utilizing that for project charters, risk registers, communications plans, stakeholder registers, pretty much anything that could be templated. And typically the only 3 documents in a predictive project that I don't necessarily recommend template, well, you could template them, but that might change over time, would be like risk management and quality and that kind of thing. But you can create the template. People can fill in that updated information. Risk. Do you deal with risk in a process-oriented way, or do you put out fires? And I'm not judgy. I put out fires, but I'm also very much focused on risk management and having a risk register and making sure that I'm assessing probability and impact and creating responses and that kind of thing. It's very formalized, mostly because I'm risk averse and I don't want to forget something. But where are you in the risk management side of things? Do you have a risk register, maybe even just an issue log, but issues or risks that have been realized? One of the things that I find that AI does really well is identify things that I might not have thought of. Doubtful, but I might not have thought of. And it also helps me assess probability impact, best responses, and even potential secondary risks, which are in essence the implementation of the response creating a whole other problem. So it can, in a lot of ways, look a couple steps deeper and give us more opportunity to discuss risk on the project level. So I've actually seen this work really, really well. And then you can also group by probability and impact, look for common root causes. Granted, we still have to review everything, right? We're not in a vacuum here and just like, oh, let AI do everything. That's not what I'm saying. But at the same time, it can speed up the process exponentially. Summarizing emails and highlighting key decisions, or making us nicer in our emails. So if you're not already using AI at all, or you haven't even utilized it for this, how many of you read and reread? Because here's the thing, face-to-face communication is 1,000 times. Face-to-face communication is 55% body language. Is you're reading for tone. Exactly, tone. That is literally why emojis were created. That's why. To replace body language so that tone could be like, hee hee, I'm just kidding. I'm fluent in sarcasm. My bad. Go by the quote. If I had more time, I would have sent a shorter email. That's true too. But yeah, we're reading for tone. And if you're feeling salty, and sometimes, tone is targeted. I've done the opposite. I was like, I'm too nice. Could you please write a salty email for me to my internet service provider, a strongly worded email and that kind of thing, because I'm too polite sometimes. No, but ultimately, it's a really great way to analyze information and say, could you restructure this for me? And in a lot of ways, that is helpful. I use be nice but direct. I love that. That's good. Because I still want to be nice. But just so you know, if you send me an email, I respond myself. Microsoft Project Trello, did I say Trello come in? TRELLO.com. That's an online task board program similar to Planner, but you can invite other people. It's web-based and that. It's not AI, but now they're starting to add different types of plugins and AI elements to those types of things. Smartsheet, ask AI to, optimize your timeline. Timelines are important, right? For sure. And I know the answer is going to be yes. I know it's going to be yes. So feel free to throw out a yes, right? Key milestones, and then say, well, what might be some of the buffer time to add to that so that we can organically build in realistic time and durations. So different stakeholders want different things, right? One of the very first things that we talk about in like predictive project management waterfall traditional. You can do this in agile as well, but ultimately is to identify our stakeholders and try and figure out what is their level of interest or impact in the project, their time zones, their emails, that kind of thing, but also their communication requirements. So a communications management plan or stakeholder engagement plan or something like that. Or you just work with the same people all the time and you know what they want. But if we can craft the same message in different ways with great tone, then we can ultimately adjust how we're communicating with our stakeholders instead of just, copy all, but rewriting an update. Some stakeholders want a lot of information. Some stakeholders just want bullet points. Some stakeholders don't want to be bothered at all. Know your audience. The stakeholder register helps you learn your audience. And then this can help you really communicate to your audience's needs. And there's a thing that we talk about that's called mirroring communication. And this is another good way to use this as well, because most people, when they write an email themselves, and they're looking for a response, if you mirror how that email was designed or put together and respond in kind, they're going to receive the message better. And part of that is, and I do this, so if you were to send me an email and say, "Hey, Ashley," ! Or "Good morning," or whatever it is, that's how I start my email back to you. If you write in bullet points, like bullet pointed questions, I'll highlight the bullet points, don't put my answers after the bullet point, like paste them in, and then, bold my answers next to the bullet points. And the other thing that I do is I sign off how you sign off. I don't have a signature baked into my email. And some of you, if you've been in class with me, you've heard this before, but I don't have a signature baked in. And so if it's kind regards, best regards, I very rarely get a sincerely, but sometimes, and so on. You could actually have ChatGPT, if you will, if you're allowed, analyze the writing style or how that person writes, or you could just notate it yourself. How did they start the email? How they end the email? And that's where we're going to go. One of the more important things is sandboxing. Right? Create a sandbox project where you can play with AI tools without any risk. And I think that, as we start getting into implementation from the PMO perspective and your team perspective and just some best practices, I feel like it's a good idea to just start with a fake project, something. So, because it's so fast, you could say, "Oh, I'm working on a painting project or a DIY project," or something like that. Create a project charter, create an email to send out to prospective contractors, that kind of thing. Typical request for proposal for something like that, whatever the case may be. You can use that sandbox project just to see what it can do. You can also use it to, perhaps adapt or adjust your prompts and see what kind of answers you get back and if that works, and start to just use innocuous data to have it create something for you and just see what it does. It's a mock test, and ChatGPT has a free version. I have the pay for version because I find it more powerful, but the free version does a good job. I mean, it'll blow you away. If you've never used it before, use it for just a fake project, maybe at home. Common AI adoption mistakes and how to avoid them in your team or your PMO. And some of these are cautionary tales in some way, shape, or form, but ultimately they're just expecting AI to replace us. Nope. AI supports decision making. It's data driven, right? But lacks emotional intelligence, although it's kind of getting weird out there. The emotional intelligence, it's words. It doesn't feel, I hope, have that emotional intelligence. But if you're having a conversation with it, you use it like an assistant, then over time, it will adapt to sort of your personality and start to use that personality. But don't mistake that for emotional intelligence. As far as interpersonal, team, that kind of thing, leadership, it simply can't replace us, okay? Can't. How to avoid it? Frame AI as a Copilot. And that's how I think of it. It's an assistant. It's something that can help me, do something quickly. So if you've never used it before, and that's why I'm asking, is like, if you've never used it before, maybe try it at home for things like that. on the free version and then use it as a sandbox to ultimately try and figure out, like, how can I use this to create our PMO docs? Or how can I use this to speed up my projects? Provide questions for books my daughter reads to ask her for comprehensive. I love that too. Look at y'all. Those are all excellent reasons to use AI. Those are great. I love it. All right. Yeah. So treat it like an assistant and to help us out and to check math past 10th grade in my world. But, she's 27 now. So, and she's an accountant. So clearly she didn't get that from me. Implementing AI without clean and consistent data. So this is a bit of a cautionary tale as well. We want to make sure that whatever we're using is standardized and clean data. We don't want to put anybody's names, or I know that you wouldn't, like social security numbers, anything like that, but documenting processes, meeting notes, and making sure that it's standardized. So every time it's transcribing a meeting, let's say, or every time it's creating a project charter, you're going to be able to get a standardized result with different data in it, but the same components. And what's really cool about what I think ChatGPT is it stores your chats. You can delete them, but it stores your chats and then picks up where the conversation left off the last time. So let's say you're starting your PMO, you put together a charter for that you want to standardize for your IT department, then you put it in for your engineering department, your marketing department. You can have it create for different job roles and that kind of thing, but keep that same formatting and just it'll pick up where it left off. It doesn't even matter if it's a month ago, right? So start small, well-documented processes, tasks, things that you can quickly check to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Over automation, that's not good either, right? It can lead to errors or poor decisions. And we want to make sure that we're not completely dependent upon it. It's a tool. Just like Microsoft Project is a tool or Planner is a tool. We don't have to draw network diagrams on whiteboards anymore. So we have these tools to help us out. But what we don't want to do is kind of trust it implicitly and not trust the data. How to avoid it? Start with low risk tasks. Think summaries. Like I said, templates. We don't want to go move full bore to complex automations until we know, okay, this is how it rolls. This is how it functions. This is what it gives us. Ignoring ethical and privacy. I never put anybody's name, personal information, including myself, at all into AI. That's just me. Again, risk averse, right? But I do feel like it's a good practice. That's why you see so many chatbots. That's why you see so many sandboxes, if you will. The Project Management Institute, I don't know how familiar you are with PMI. I know some of my students are, but the Project Management Institute, they have their whole AI sandbox in there. It's called PMI Infinity. We have, definitely Storm AI, which is it was trained, set clear policies for what AI can and cannot be used for. And that's, that could be a PMO directive if you have a PMO or you're starting a PMO. It could be a team directive. And I think a lot of times when people first start using it and they see how fast it is and what it can and can't do, there's a tendency in some cases to maybe use it as a crutch. And that's not what we want, right? We want to use it like an assistant. So that brings us to starting small, pilots versus an overhaul situation. But I feel like trying to maybe promote or say, this is what we want to use for our projects and rolling it up the chain of command to get approval. Sometimes you got to prove it. Trying to get an organization to be like, yeah, let's embrace this. Our CEO embraced it before I even knew what it was. I was like, whoa, what? Artificial intelligence. I was like, wow, head of the curve. So it was like, yeah, feel free. We got to use this. Common pitfalls, inaccurate or unstructured data. Because it's really data in, data out. That's what you're going to get. And expecting full automation right out of the gate. Those things have to be tested. I haven't found anything yet that I could say I could utilize it for full automation, because mostly what I'm doing is this. So I don't really need automation. I answer emails myself and so on, but human review is still essential. Like if ChatGPT writes an email for you, you're still going to read it and read it again, just like you would if you wrote it yourself, right? And assuming AI will make better decisions without any context at all, and no, it's going to give you vague information. So prompts do matter, but they don't matter as much as they did when it first came out. And you'll know after prompting it whether or not you're getting the result that you are looking for, and then you can recreate. And in fact, Colin, would you mind dropping those 2 documents in there for me? I appreciate it. One of them is, the prompts. It's a list of prompts, and then the different types of AI and what it can do. And so I also have the different thing, it's almost a list. ChatGPT made it. Well, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't me. ChatGPT said, here's what I can do for project managers. And it'll give you some, additional ideas about different categories like scope and schedule and, risk and that kind of thing. Involving the team in tool selection. And that's a good conversation to have, basically say, oh, well, what do you use? What would you like to use? But emphasizing that this is a helper. This is not a do your job for you. And short focused training. That's why I was asking about the pilot, and was there some kind of training? And short, like I said, once you know where all the buttons are, like planners, I think it's only 4 hours or something, the training on demand. But at the same time, it's still, once you know where everything is, it's kind of up to us to utilize the workflow as we need to. AI governance and ethics in project management. Who owns the output? And this is a big topic of conversation now with like the Mid-Journeys and the, like image generation softwares. And there's a lot of, bots writing books that are self-published and so on Amazon and so on. So there's this big conversation as far as who actually owns the data, but a simple template. I mean, put it in Word, save as, communications plan. And at that point, you can utilize that. But watch out for bias in risk and hiring related decisions. So if you're in HR, I mean, not that I would ever recommend this, but analyzing a resume or that kind of thing and then using AI to do so, I don't recommend that at all. It's putting people's private information. But we also want to be careful about the ethical side of having artificial intelligence make human decisions. Create clear documentation when using AI, so everybody knows these are the rules. And I think this is perhaps the most important thing, is that the human element still matters, right? We lead. AI assists. Inevitably, AI cannot replace negotiation, emotional intelligence, or trust. It can't. It can give ideas on how to negotiate. Anybody a really good negotiator? I'm not. I'm a terrible negotiator. Honestly, probably shouldn't say that out loud in case y'all want to negotiate or something. But I'm not the greatest negotiator. And so having bullet points, let's say your husband is a great negotiator, mine too. It's really irritating because I lose almost every joust. Every verbal joust, in some way, shape, or form, I lose somehow, for sure. So PMs still lead. AI supports, you manage conflict. AI just helps to organize it.